I look worn out. We took the kids to the beach today over at Little Fish Lake in Vandalia, and oh my God! If you would have seen that place, see that was the place where we found out that I had diabetes. That's where I actually started to go to diabetic shock at 6 years ago. And this is my first time being back because the next year it flooded severely, and they've just now got it to the point where you could use the beach and the shelter house and stuff again. And the whole day long, man, all I had was this eerie pit in my stomach. And I know it was all psychological because of, getting sick, sleeping the whole time. Everybody was celebrating the 4th of July. And then, the next day going into shock and dying. It just kind of.
So you heard it here, folks. Don't go to that lake because that's where you get diabetes. Apparently.
Yeah. You get diabetes having too much fun at Little Fish Lake in Vandalia.
I guess so. The little fish got the big fish. All right, 3, 2, 1. You guys are already watching us, so we're live. Welcome to the Unrestricted Paranormal Show. I'm your host, Dan Holroyd. With me, as always, is Drew Ellsworth McRae, the granddaddy of ghost hunting. I'm actually older than he is, so I'm probably the granddad, but he's my co-host, and welcome to the program here on our channel, Unrestricted. As a lot of you may have noticed, the Unrestricted network is not up right now, and I am reconstructing that, rebuilding it, rebranding. We're still Unrestricted Paranormal. When we come back next week, you are going to see a huge difference. I would say probably by Monday or Tuesday, you will see we'll be back up, and then you can go to our new link, which I will make sure all of you get. But for now, you can come to our channel here on YouTube as well as Facebook, Unrestricted, and Southern Michigan Paranormals. We have a special guest with us tonight. I coerced her, so to speak, in a nice manner, to come on and do the show after we had met first time. And I will tell everybody that I was worried about the first meeting because some people involved with this meeting were giving me, I think, in a sense, the wrong time and the wrong schedule with which I was to operate and do my meeting. And she's a little perturbed, and I could understand that. But you know what? All was good, man. We hit it off, and I really enjoyed our time that we had together. It's way too short. With us is Rhiannon Cizon. Did I pronounce that right? Cizon? Cizon, like scissors. It's Cizon. Yes. I'm going to read a little bit off of your page here. She joined the museum as the 7th director in 2019. Prior to coming to Michigan, she worked at museums in New York, Wisconsin, Texas, North Carolina, and Indiana. Drew will come back on here in a minute. With 15 years experience in museums and NPOs, Rhiannon brings her knowledge and hearty enthusiasm. Oh, I dig that. To the BCHA. That stands for the Berrien. What does that stand for? Because it doesn't match anything I've got. I have the Berrien County Historical Association, so it does. So the BCHA, okay, for short. She has 2 bachelors from Ball State University. I'm not going to hold that against her. Just
please don't.
What?
You feel indiscretions.
Right, I'm joking. Apparel design and public history, and masters from Valparaiso University in heritage management. When not working at the History Center, she is active in Girls on the Run. Oh yeah, we had. Oh, that we'll talk about that some other time. But cool. She reads crafts, writes, and gets into shenanigans. And the next person to say shenanigans, I'm going to pistol whip with the butt of my pistol. Anybody? Name that movie. Anybody? When she's left to her own devices. I had a great conversation with you. Impressed to no end. Not that my opinion means a hill of poop in anybody's backyard. But for me, I'm one of these guys, and I don't want to come off narcissistic by saying I'm really hard to get that kind of feeling from somebody, but I am, and we hit it off. And when you told me about some experiences that you had in another place, which we will bring up, really caught my interest. But thank you for taking time out tonight to be here.
No problem. Yeah, I had preferred the afternoon because I knew I was only have a limited amount of time anyway. And then as I was leaving to go to this meeting, I was like, if he'd come in the afternoon, I wouldn't have had to cut off this conversation that was going so well.
Right. We were just sharing shenanigans and other stories, as it were. And you were full of a lot of great stories, Brownsville, Texas, and some other stuff. But I'm going to let you get to that here in the show.
Okay.
Drew's trying to join us. I'm not sure what's happening there. We'll see if he can come back on here in a minute. It'll sort itself out. So I've kind of read a little bit about who you are. In respect to history, how young were you when you caught the bug, when you said, this is something that I want to do, and it just went from there?
Well, I've always liked history. I was obviously that kid that was like, yeah, American Girl stories. And I'd read a lot of history stuff, but I never considered history as a career in my teenage years. And actually, I didn't even think about museums as a career until I was well into college. I had switched from advertising to fashion. And I was like, I like fashion, I like design, I like the creative part of it, but I don't think I could see myself sitting behind a damn sewing machine for the rest of my life. I don't think I could do this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm at a bit of a loss. What am I going to do with this degree that I have? And there's a lot of things you can do with a fashion design degree. And ironically, that's been the more useful degree for me as a museum professional, if you could believe it. But I had to take a class called historical fashion. And it was basically what it says. It was historical fashion. And the professor who led it had been in charge of the textiles collection at University of Minnesota. And I was like, holy shit, I can be paid to play with like costume and textiles. And so 2 days later, I walked down the street to the quad, so to speak, went into the history department and said, hey, I need me a history degree. And so that's how I got started. I was a year away from graduating on time when I decided to pick up the second major. So I ended up staying an extra year, got the 2 majors. And I knew, because I wanted to go into museums at that point, I had to go and get some experience. So I got very lucky. If you're not familiar with Indiana, Ball State's in East Central Indiana, about an hour or so north of Indianapolis. And it's home to Minnetrista Cultural Center, which is a phenomenally awesome museum. But they're right there in Muncie, right down the street from where I was living at. So I walked in and said, I want to volunteer. I'd spend the next 2 years volunteering in collections and programs. And then I graduated. It did take a bit to get, oh, I do look young, don't I? Don't worry. Let me talk. I'll sound like an 85-year-old. It'll be fine. We actually, so I kind of went in and out of the field over the last 17 or so years, but being a paid history person is not something I ever thought myself seeing, but I have always liked history. I watched history shows. I've watched, I go places. I have always liked museums, but it's kind of a bit of a late bloomer in the career portion, but I've always enjoyed it. And it is what it is. I've had in and out of the field, small museums I've consulted. So this is my second directorship, the longer of the 2, though. Thank God. And so I've enjoyed it very much, and I enjoy the public part of it. That's why I got into museums. I didn't want to just always be stuck in the back, as much as I still like working with textiles and dealing with the artifacts. I always have fun stuff, but I like talking to people and getting them interested in the idea of history and how it can relate to them.
Very cool. Wow. Okay, thanks everybody for being here tonight on the show. We're going to play some cartoons now. No? Anybody? That was a hell of a rundown. Wow. I can't, I thought I'd been everywhere and done everything. I think you matched me by times 10. So let's jump ahead. Let's jump to the Brownsville, Texas thing. That's the discussion that really caught, my interest. We shared a lot of fascinating information. How did you end up in Texas?
A Canadian friend gave me the link to a British website, and it got me a job in Texas.
Oh, damn Canadians.
Love my Canadian friends. I had not, as soon as I graduated, I just took a job to pay the bills. I'd moved back home, and I was getting interviews, but people kept saying I didn't have this level of experience or this kind of experience. And so I was getting a lot of rejection. And so I tried to put it out there. Finally put it out there. I said, guys, if you know of anything, please let me know. And a friend of mine from the field, she reached out to me. She said, hey, there's this British website with one of these universities. They have both American and European. Check it out. And on there was a fellowship at the Brownsville Historical Association. Had no idea where the hell Brownsville was in Texas. It just said it was Texas. I applied, interviewed, and I interviewed twice in the same day, and they offered me the position. A whole whopping $18,000 a year, which was not much more than when I got paid, which not much less than I got paid.
Yeah.
So I packed up. It was supposed to be a year position. It was a fellowship, and so I packed up my car, a 1990 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra, and drove 24 hours from Chicago down to Brownsville, which is on the border. So if you're looking at the state of Texas, the very tip of Texas, that's where Brownsville is.
Yep.
The museum I lived in, or worked in, technically partially lived in for a period of time, was like 30 yards from the bridge into Mexico. So we were in downtown Brownsville. And so I ended up staying for 4 years. And in that time, I went from fellow to assistant director and then did a myriad of things while I was there. But it is arguably the most haunted location I had ever lived in. I had ever worked in before or since. I don't think I'll ever match Brownsville in terms of its paranormal activity.
Right.
So,
and it does have a history. I mean, a lot of us in the paranormal are aware of it. We're very aware of it. Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh my God, Brownsville, you survived that?
Yeah, I about jumped out of my chair when you said that. I'm like, oh man, I know a lot about that place, but who better to talk about it than you? You've been there,
Well, and I did all the interpretation down there. And if you're not familiar with Brownsville's history, you may be even familiar with other things. Its history is not an easy history. There was at least 2 yellow fever epidemics. Cholera was an issue. You had the U.S.-Mexico War, which had the first 2 battles in Brownsville. You had eventually later on the Mexican Revolution in 1910 would affect Brownsville. There was a battle at Matamoros, which is the city across the river.
Yep.
And just in general, a lot of movement. You've got water. You're on a river, a major river. You're not too far from the Gulf of Mexico. Demographically, the community skews young, meaning a huge chunk of the population identifies under 18. So a lot of youthful energy in there. And then you just got a lot of people who would go to church. They'd Hail Marys, do everything. They'd go to lunch. They would have their merienda. They'd go to the oberia, buy something to curse their neighbor, and then go back to church in the evening. So this is an area where people believe in ghosts. They actively engage in alternative belief systems. So, if you've never lived there, it's a really cool place. Wouldn't recommend it in the summer. That's hell. That's true hell. Subtropical Texas hell is a lie. But it is, in general, a very colorful community, very proud of its past, very much trying to preserve that past. And so the atmosphere in terms of all the things you check mark to make, what would define, a potential paranormal place or a place activity, they check off pretty much the entire list once you go down it.
Right. And I had remembered
listening to Rhiannon talk. I feel like all the time I spent in Texas was a waste. I mean, all I accomplished was getting in close with the Alabama Coshada Nation when I was down there. They don't let anybody that's not native in. And I actually managed to, meet a few of them, learn about their traditions and stuff. I just feel like that's not even nothing compared to what you experienced. My God.
In such a short amount of time, too.
Yeah, a little amount of time. My aunt, I had forgotten when I left you. I remembered my aunt had lived there for quite a few years with her fiance Lupe, and she had some stories, some colorful stories. But she loved being down there, and she said, yeah, summers were horrendous, to put up with. But there's a lot of people who've lived there that they're kind of used to it, man. Don't give it a second thought. Transplants, different story. So I would have to ask, what was your first breaking in of ghostly type activity? Something, the first time that you realized something was going on and you were aware. you remember
In
that?
Brownsville or in general?
Just in general. Just in general.
You know, I do a lot of talks on what I call the spooky subjects: cemeteries, ghosts, cryptids, urban legends. And I get that question a lot. And there's no satisfactory answer because as long as I can remember, it's always interested me. I always looked for the ghost stories. And I was reading Hans Holzer as early as, the fourth grade. And, I was reading urban legends. I always it's very strange because when people see me, if you see me on the street, my aura is suburban mom with 3 kids in a minivan. But I love the ghost stories. I love the spooky stuff. I've always been interested in it. I don't know where it started, what triggered it. I remember seeing things as a kid, but it's hard to say if it was something that was actually there because it was not ghostly. It wasn't ghostly. I would see crows and the tail of what I thought was a dinosaur in my room, I could see, but when you're 3, your brain comes up with a lot of things, right? But I've always been interested. There's not a time when I haven't said this is something that attracts me to it.
Right.
So, and I'm a Scorpio, so I'm already naturally attracted to the all cut and, all of this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But there is no point in time. And then I never really had experiences growing up, other those weird little dreamscape kind of seeing things. Nothing ghostly. When we moved to my dad's parents' house after my grandmother passed away, my grandfather got remarried, I'd go down to the basement to dance, move around, kind of have like my own teenage time. And I always felt like I was being watched, but I couldn't see anything. So I actually ended up configuring how I did things so I couldn't see the back of the basement. And I wouldn't look in there. And then, I got more into my paganism in college with some friends, and they'd see things or they'd do things. I'm like, we had gone to this house. I love this story. You're going to learn something today you'd probably never learned before. We had I'm a part of a trio of friends. We're all pagans. They see things, sense things. I'm just here. And they've always talked about how I have this wall, this barrier. I can't see or anything, whether or not that's made by me or just naturally there. We don't know. And we were helping my friend and her boyfriend move into a new home. They were switching apartments. This is down in college. And it was just a standard kind of craftsman style you see down in Muncie and typical college, poorly renovated, painting over kind of bugs kind of thing.
Right.
And we kept walking.
Ball State.
So we're walking around and we're just unloading the car. And all of a sudden, Kate comes to me and she's crying, she's sobbing. And I'm like, bro, what happened? You were fine like a minute ago. She goes, something just screamed in my ear that I was a traitor. And I could feel something touch me. And she's pagan. She knows this. She knows, this is not something that normally freak her out, but she was really freaked out. So we took her back to my apartment, put her to bed, and she grabbed my arm and she goes, take this with you. And it was one of her rosaries. She was a religious studies major. So we go back and Buddha, my other friend, was like, I said, do you feel anything? He's like, I don't feel anything. He goes, there's something here, but I can't sense what it is. And I was like, well, I'm not playing no damn games. We're getting this crap unpacked and I'm going home. It's already 11 o'clock. And so we're kind of going through. And he's like, I keep feeling something's watching me. And then don't ask me what made me do this. So I started singing Kumbaya off key at the top of my lungs. And he goes, well, whatever it is didn't like that. It went away. I said, okay, well, there you go. The best exorcism song is Kumbaya sung off key.
Only by you, though. Only by you.
Only by me, apparently.
Yeah.
So we were finishing putting things away and we were coming out and Buddha stopped and he was looking at the corner of the building, which was in the dark. And I said, come on. He just he almost wasn't listening to me. And I said, bro, I want to go. Let's go. He goes, there's a kid over there. I said, whatever you're seeing is not there. It's not there for me. He goes, but it's a little kid asking for help. We figured out later that whatever it is a shapeshifter. It shapeshifted into things that would lure people or scare people. And so whatever it is attached to the property. And we know it's shifted at least 3 different times for 3 different people. And I remember I said, I ain't playing with this shit. I'll salt the hell. I will salt this earth. I will kumbaya the hell. I don't give it. Go away. We're going home. And she was only in that house maybe 4 months before she left to go overseas for a teaching job. But she Never had a night's peace in that house. Whatever it was didn't like her. Took a shine to her boyfriend. And one day he accused her of something. And she's like, if you're listening to the ghost, you need to listen to something else. And then that kind of pretty much, that was a nail in their relationship.
No.
You
No.
know,
Now,
so.
what
but
part of Muncie were you living in?
I lived on the northeast side, I think. I was over by Minnetrista, east of the campus, but she moved south of the campus. So I was not too far from Riverside. But I do have there was one incident in college I was like, I can still see it in my brain. It was my senior, head of my last year. I said, I'm getting the hell out of the damn dorms. My senior year, I don't want to be in the dorms anymore. So I'm with some friends. We're touring different houses, and we go into this. It had originally been a 2-bedroom Craftsman built around 1930. They split up the living room so that they could have a 3rd bedroom, typical landlord stuff. But it was one of those that had the 2 bedrooms and then a small hallway, and in between was a bathroom. So they're doing their thing, and I'm just kind of whatever. And I'm standing in this little hallway, and I had this moment out of time. It's not even I wouldn't necessarily call it a haunting. It was more like residual memory of the building. And I was looking out, my friends are talking, the landlord's chatting with them, and I can see out of the corner of my eye, hanging on either side of this entrance into the living room, pictures of Jesus and Mary. And they are like the Sacred Heart, those really kind of sepia tone ones that was like in every grandmother's house, like in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those creepy ones, yeah.
I could see them perfectly detailed out of the corner of my eye, but if I looked directly, there was nothing there. The walls were blank. And then I kept seeing something out of the corner of my eye, but when I looked, there was nothing there. So instead, I just kind of unfocused. And the bedroom to the left of me, it's dark. It's like 7:30 at night in the winter. It is dark outside. That room's full of junk, but out of the corner of my eye, the sun is shining. I could see the sunbeams coming through the window. I see a bed with, it was a metal bed with the metal bars at the front and the top, almost a hospital looking bed. I could see a dresser, and I could see a mirror also reflecting light. I walked out of there and I said, we're not moving in there. I said, to hell with that.
Did that house happen to have a, like 2nd story, like with a staircase that I wouldn't say spiraled, but there was a curve to it to get up to where you were?
It was all single story. There was a basement, there may have been an attic, but it was all single story. Now you have to understand that, it's not a surprise. That house it was like a block and a half away from the White River, which runs through Muncie. And so there you go again. You got a lot of water, you got a lot of college kids, a lot of energy, but I have never before since seen anything like that. And I was like, we're not moving here.
Yeah. I mean, you just described something that I had dreams about for a while, which I thought was Lafayette, Indiana. And it was a white mansion. And I was seeing this gentleman and his wife, and they were concerned. They wanted to be remembered. I could see them laid out in their funeral. I could see how the house used to look as opposed to what it is now. And it's divided up like what you just mentioned into apartments. They had taken the staircase out, but I could see the staircase as it used to be. And when I came out the front door and I were to go into older sections of town to the right of the house, there's neighborhoods, but you got to a point on the town where you look down and you see a river. There was a river, and there's a predominant radio station up on the hill for a university. And I could never pin it down. So I'm sorry. I just meant that when you started sharing that, it almost like keyed into a memory that I had, but that's definitely odd.
It could have been Muncie, but no, that was a single story Craftsman, just a standard single family home.
Yeah, you touch on something though, Rhiannon, that I've talked about before. When I still talk about when I give these paranormal lectures and these events, that we talk about that slip in time. That I don't always think that some of the things that we collide with, or that we have an occurrence with, is always something that's from the other side. Sometimes I think there's that slip, and we might be hearing things or talking to somebody that's actually, it's cohabitating in its own time slip, if that makes sense. So, Taps had an incident at the Stanley where they have the room of the Countess. And if you've seen that episode, Steve and I think Jason are in there and they're asking questions, and they get responses. And one of the questions was, Countess, we're here. Can you hear us? And I believe she answers back, yes, they hear it on tape later. Yes, I'm here, but where are you? Now, what makes this interesting, everybody stay with me. What makes this interesting is that in her memoirs, which she kept quite close records of her time in that room, how she felt about that room, and she felt that the room was haunted. She thought that the hotel was haunted even when she was there, because she said she used to hear strange voices in her room. Get this, asking her strange questions. And so then you line that up to what's going on EVP wise, and you're like, was there a window? Were they hearing each other? Were the conditions just right? One of those things. So I think you experienced something like that. I think that you had a little bit of a time slip. You were there at the right time. Winter is perfect. I will tell you, because you've been around enough paranormal people, that I've gotten more paranormal things, evidence-wise and captures, in winter months than I ever did in spring and summer, only because we feel that the Van Allen radiation belt has a lot to do with the positive and negative ion bombardment. And we get most of it here in the United States in winter months. So no telling. Just want to throw that out. Just trying to make the show.
I ran into a lot of paranormal activity when I lived in Muncie. I lived on the east side. And Muncie has a very, very long history with the Muncie, Delaware, and the settling of that area and stuff. Their forced evacuation out of there. So Muncie is a very, very active town. And then, you leave Delaware County, you go to like Blackford County, and there's quite a few places that a couple of the places we expected going down that way that are reportedly popular haunted locations are within a 25-mile of proximity to Muncie and the White River. So, that could very well explain too a lot of what she was running into. And so Muncie's only like a half hour, 40 minutes from where I grew up at. So I done all my major partying right after high school in the village, just to the east side of the campus there in Ball State. So
yeah,
very familiar with that area.
The pagan groups I'd hang around with, and I will admit, and Dan and I talked about this yesterday, I tend to be very selective about the people I hang around with, because I am in things that tend to attract, I'm a little on the skeptical side. I'm not fully skeptical, but I'm like, let's take this a little bit, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh my God, and they're all crazy. And I'm like, I can't handle you. I'm too uptight for this. I can't handle you.
Right.
But anyway, I know what I am. But anyway, a lot of my pagan friends would talk about how Muncie felt different. Like there was almost like something over Muncie that was like containing everything. I had some friends, like there were certain parts of town that they would feel differently in, and they suspected that there were node lines running through Muncie. But because there's so much energy in there, they had a hard time kind of pinpointing all of the exact, if it was of a giant node or if it was a bunch of little ones that happened to intersect there. But the pagans down there was a ton of pagans at Ball State. And we all talked about, we all had talked about how there was just this, when we came to town to do our tours for college, we felt attracted to it. Ball State was not my first choice, but when I went down there, I said, yes, I need to come here. So, I make fun of Muncie, I make fun of Ball State, but in all reality, I was like, yeah, this is a place I want to go. And everyone I talked to who were pagan said the same thing. They said they felt like they were coming home. They felt like they were being with family. That was a very weird sensation. So they felt this was a place to be. And of course, it's only like 13,000 students. So eventually all the pagans are going to find each other. So, and then of course we all swap those stories. So Muncie is one of those places that just, it's got some things going down there. Brownsville's got that too.
Yeah, well, any place that there's bodies of water, I think the Native American connection, it goes without saying, Drew brought that up, and there was so much that went on there. And if we all remember, let's touch the pagan thing for a second. and in touch with a lot of the homeopathic medicines, and one with the earth and all the stuff about nature and all this other thing. What do you think the Native Americans are doing? So obviously, pagans are going to pick up on that energy, being that this is where they're at most of the time too. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. I definitely think there's a connection, and I appreciated her bringing up, the nodes, and the other side is the landlines. I think that neither one of these deals get enough respect. I think people don't realize that that does have a lot to do with activity. I've seen booklets where they've got these laid out. I've seen some of them laid out here in Kalamazoo County, where I'm at, and other areas. And I mean, you can almost line up where there's high activity, where things of strange occurrences happen. Are you okay? Did I get you all hot and
Yeah,
bothered?
no, I put some chicken in to bake, and now my entire apartment, which is a
Okay, you had me worried.
450 square foot of studio, is filled with
hot
steam
chicken
and smoke. So I've got things blowing. So if you hear things in the background, that's what you're hearing. I do apologize.
No, it's all good.
I forget that sometimes my my stove does this to me, and I'm over here like, I'm gonna run away and turn my AC
Days
off.
of apartment living, girl. I tell you, man, my wife and I used to forget about that and cook something in the damn oven, and next thing you know, the apartment's on fire. Like, oh my God, it's just use that in the winter to heat the place.
I know.
Crazy,
I was like, I gotta
crazy
turn
times.
on the AC to get the air moving in here, and then I gotta open up the window because now I gotta get all the fan out, and like, I did not time this very well.
It's all good. It's all good. We're going to take our first break. Everybody stay with us. Those of you listening, you're listening to us here at Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Unrestricted Radio. Now, it sounds a lot like what we have going on, but it's completely different. Unrestrictedradio.com is a free app. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your family, even the family you don't like, okay? Because it helps build bridges. That's all I'm going to say. Because it offers alternative music from around the world. We're connected with Reverb Nation and many other things, a lot of independent artists, and it's music and people and bands that your stations can't play. They won't play. So go to Unrestricted. Thanks for listening to us tonight here on Sunday night. Also, let's not forget our sponsors, Henderson Castle, hendersoncastle.com. It's an $18.95 bed and breakfast right here in downtown Kalamazoo. You too can come and book yourself a room, and guess what you get to do once a month? Now, July and August, we take a break. I just want everybody to hear that on this ad. But if you come between September and, let's say, June, yours truly, that's right, me, I will take you through a historic dinner tour of the Henderson Castle. Frank and Mary left a great legacy. You'll learn some things about the family. And also, our other sponsor, Gun Barrel Coffee, as somebody earlier on when we started the show mentioned, you've had the rest. Please try the best. It's Gun Barrel Coffee, gunbarrelcoffee.com. If you use this code, guys, I was told by Brian that it's still good, BDOG12, and you'll get a discount on your first purchase. Your purchases and anything purchased from the online store or at their headquarters in Batavia, Illinois, go to help veteran organizations around the world. A lot of you have seen me wearing these dog tags, which is Till Valhalla. I also got the band 22 a day. That's another thing I ask you to check out and support. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and I'm passionate about helping. All right, now that I've said all that mess, let's take our break. We'll be back for more right after this. And Rhiannon burns her house down. We'll be back right after. We're back. Those of you watching, we're back. Thank you for staying with us. Hey, everybody.
Definitely going to be the most interesting live stream.
It will be the most interesting show we've had. It'll be a hot show in the old town tonight.
It'll be fire, dude.
It'll be fire. It'll be fire. That's a fire. Just rolling around a little bit. You'll be all right.
Can't say I don't bring the heat when I come by.
Oh my.
You're
right there.
When Rhiannon starts running back and forth carrying all her belongings out the door of her apartment, we'll know that chicken just wasn't going to operate.
Well, it got a little burned. So.
It's gonna be like Peter Griffin and the chicken.
Yeah.
All right, enough of that immaturity. Welcome back to our show. We've got Rhiannon with us now. Let's talk about Berrien Springs. we talked a little bit. I mean, we talked more than a little bit. We talked a little bit about your uphill struggles and different things going on. I had traveled by those grounds years before you came on the scene. I think I'd shared with you that old curator had taken me on a little tour, and I had showed some interest about coming through. And I think this was probably about 12 years ago. And so every time I drive through town, I see this fenced in area and these beautiful buildings and this church and this jail, I mean, just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. And here you are, you're trying to, I won't say reinvent, but you're trying to rejuvenate, I think is the word. And I'm passionate about what it is you're trying to do. And I definitely, the feelers, my feelers were going nuts the whole time I was sitting with you. I was really trying to behave myself. I can't say that I felt a lot going on, but there's something obviously going on in the house. So you've come into this, and you've now agreed to have a couple of us come out here and do our thing in September. And I want to thank you for that, by the way. What's been the most difficult part for you? Is it lining up, the truth of history to certain legends that have always been, I guess, stuck or attached to the place, and also restoration? What do you think has been the toughest uphill battle for you?
Honestly, it's been the restoration. So for those of you who have never been there, you owe me $1 and you need to come up and visit my museum. But the courthouse square has been in decline. We are the Berrien County Historical Association stewards the History Center Courthouse Square, which is owned by the county. It's a municipal private partnership, which I did in Brownsville and I have experience with. We have been in decline for around 20 years, and decline in the museum doesn't look like decline in other nonprofits. It's almost imperceivable by the average person, because if they're still doing certain things or whatever, then, oh, well, they must be doing something. But we had a lot of staff turnover in the last 20 years, especially lower level staff, not like the director. The directors have been around at least 5 to 6 years each. Since 2000. And then we had a curator there for like 35 years, and then he finally skedaddled. And so there was some consistency, but because he'd been there so long, they gave him, he was all allowed to do whatever he wanted. So then the programming then was geared towards his interest, which then attracted a certain amount of people, and they were interested in, well, there was no point in doing anything else. The other stuff wasn't attracting anybody, so we're going to kind of stick with it. So what you start seeing is what I like to call circling the wagons, where they kind of only focus on a select number of topics with a select group of people, because that's who's coming. That's where they're getting the money. And so by the time I came on board in 2019, I was literally told by the board that they needed someone to fix the issue. They had done a strategic planning session in 2018, the first real strategic planning they had done in ages. And so they had sent out these survey cards for those who were attending the annual signature event every year. And I was like, yes, we love it, blah, blah, blah. This is great. Da, 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 da. Right. And then they started doing, what's called stakeholder interviews. So your public, people who are investing in you, your members, municipalities, we had to invest in the county, schools, and it was a 180 difference. We don't feel the need to go to your place anymore. It's not engaging for my students. We think you're abandoned. We didn't realize you were still open.
Oh, wow.
You don't, in my first 2 weeks.
Wow, that's harsh.
It was very harsh. And it was an eye opener for the board to hear all these outsiders go, why should we invest in you? There's nothing worth investing in, which is essentially the gist of everything. And so the board was becoming very concerned about this. And our board president at the time has experience in nonprofit and corporate governance. So she's run tons of strategic plans. So she did something called a scenario plan. And for the strategic plan is essentially a plan a nonprofit uses for a set number of years to strategically build on their goals. And it gives us a guideline of what we should be doing, increasing our programming income by 30% over 5 years.
Right.
Ours is kind of shot to hell because of COVID, but we're trying to resalvage it. Anyway, a scenario plan is when you look at things you as a nonprofit cannot control, and how your nonprofit will react in those situations. So like say a global pandemic,
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah.
So Liz only had one scenario on that plan, and it was, what if we lost funding from the county? We had seen a decline in our funding for years. They shoved us under the Parks Department, try to do this, try to do that, less and less money. And that is, that was the bulk of, that's like 70% of our, income for a long time, because they weren't gaining income from other sources.
Right.
So she did the scenario plan, and basically she mapped it out for the board and said, if we don't make radical changes soon and the county takes away funding, we have enough financials to last for, in a good scenario, 2 years. We don't have enough. We have to fire all of the staff. We would not have enough money to pay anybody. We'd probably keep the director for a year, but then that money is going to be run out. There's not enough income coming in, and we need to diversify our income. We need to do this. So that scared the hell out of the board, which helped me, because the board had been like, no, we're fine. No, we're fine. No, we're fine. And I'm like, this is why you communicate with your board when shit's not fine, because they're thinking everything's okay and it's not. So when I got hired in February 2019, my predecessor announced her retirement. The board's like, okay, well, we need to find someone who's going to try and turn this place around. And I interviewed 4 times for this position. I think there are CEOs out there that did, for large scale companies, that didn't interview that much. And they basically made it very clear that whoever was going to be hired needed to fix this organization, essentially turn it around, hopefully in a reasonable amount of time, from 20 years of decline. Well, I said in my interview, I'm the Marie Kondo of museums. I love mess. So I got smart, and I was like, I just want a year contract. I want to make sure I know I'm going to be hired. I'm going to be employed for at least a year to try and do something. I'm still here 3 years later. It'll be 3 years in August. And I have drug us out of the hole is what I've done.
Good for you. Yeah.
It's in it. We've done extensive amounts of renovation on the interior. We found asbestos in the old permanent exhibit, so that had to be redone. We did it in 6 months and for less than $10,000, which is virtually unheard of in the museum world. We've renovated in the sheriff's residence. We added more programs, diversified the program subjects. We improved our member newsletter. We got more active on social media. I mean, my predecessor retired out. Like, social media was not high on her list. We revamped our member newsletter. He was our vice president. He had to roll off. His term had ended. But Tom Nelson, who was a former judge here in Berrien County, longtime board member, on and off over the years. He's been here since the 80s. And he goes, I've seen more of the collections and heard more of Berrien County's history in the last 3 years than all the time I've heard before you joined. So, and it's not just the public facing things, the exhibits and the programs and, all of that, the buildings, the grounds. The organization was being poorly run. Like, we had just had a theft at the museum last week.
Oh, no.
So they're like, well, what's the security protocol? I'm like, we ain't got no security protocol. I'm lucky I got a set of bylaws, y'all. So the board we've been revamping the board. We've got some new, really excitable board members who have great experience. We have a former federal prosecutor. We've got a couple college professors, people who are very good with those kinds of details, who are like, yes, let's make these things. I'm like, go for it, because I am sure as hell too busy to do this. So it's this dragging things out has been changing. This perception's been the hardest thing, because once you lose trust with someone, it is very difficult to gain that back.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of haunted, I guess, without being too punny.
Yeah, theme of the show. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'm a little haunted because when my first, like 2 weeks after I started, I had an interview with the then county administrator. That he has since retired. We have someone different now. The head of the Parks Department, the head of the Parks Commission Board, and he used to be on the board of directors for the BCHA and a couple of others. And the county administrator, Bill, looked me right in the face and said, "We think you're just using us for free rent." I'm like, ooh, ouch. Why don't you just kick me a little harder in the shin while you're at it?
So he's been reading the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, apparently. Good Lord.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay.
But it needed to be said. And I think this is where being brutally honest had to have happened. And I said, I don't blame you. we've got, I said, I read the strategic planning stuff. I read these comments. You're not alone. People said, why is it worth investing in you when there's nothing going on? You do these trips all the time that really don't talk about Berrien County history. You talk about the same three subjects. You have weird hours. Your exhibits aren't engaging. It's been the same permanent exhibit since 1975. What is it? So they needed someone. Anybody could be in this position. I just happened to be the sorry bastard that was like, yes, I'll do it. I love this. I love it. Fix it. And that's what I've been doing for 3 years. You know,
the sorry bastard.
Well, you know, I was born out of wedlock, so it does work. Anyway, so that revitalization has been the biggest thing because it's about gaining that trust back from the community. Having our members having the members come back and renew their membership every year, having people come attend our events, people contributing to our annual fund, people helping sponsor events and all of these things. And the turnaround has been pretty enormous in the 3 years I've been here. And my staff has been very helpful in that, but I just basically grabbed everyone by the by the scruff of their neck, and I dragged them behind me saying, we're changing things, boys. Don't look back. And so that's been the hardest thing because now it's about getting out there and, you know, we have a small budget, so it's not like I can go buy a freaking billboard. It's expensive as hell, but, you know, being strategic in how what booklets we're getting into or making sure the county is promoting us because we are a county park, you know, make sure we're there in their promo materials. We've been in the newspaper more times in the last 3 years than I think we were in the entire 10 years prior to that. The Palladium put us on the Herald Palladium, put us on the front page a handful of times in 2020 alone. So we're getting that profile out there. Good. When people come in, they say, well, I say, oh, how'd you find out? Oh, I saw you online. A friend told me. I was driving past and I looked like I wanted, you know, I saw the open sign, which we didn't even have that out for years. So that's been the hardest thing. For us, the focus has been on revitalization so much that there's these huge pockets of Berrien County history that we still don't know or we're still getting familiar with. So we have made the challenge to ourselves to scrap all of the old talks that they used to give for the public and come up with all new ones and challenge ourselves to not just bring something new to the community, but get into these areas that have been ignored for so long. So, you know, true crime or, you know, religious history or, you know, this, that, and the other. And so raising those funds, people have been giving. We've been very grateful for it. We are seeing people renew. We are seeing people attending our events. Some are much more popular than others. And we just kind of toss some darts at the dartboard and seeing what works and what doesn't. There may come a point in time where I can casually just sit down and say, well, here are the legends of Berrien Springs. And it be something I can chat about, but I don't know what they are. I don't know Berrien County's lore. And it's sad because that's my favorite part. I love folklore, right? But, you know, keeping my job and keeping my buildings open have been more of a priority for the last 3 years. But that doesn't mean that there isn't room for that stuff to come in. There isn't room for those stories to be told alongside everything else. This is unofficial, but you guys, I'll share it with you. But we plan on at some point reaching out to the wineries and the breweries and the distilleries and, you know, related kind of places here in Berrien County. And hopefully we'll take our pop history happy hour on the road when we come in and we'll spend 20 minutes talking about a random subject. I mean, every history isn't everything. So everything will be connected to Berrien County. And we just chat and talk and, you know, let people start telling their stories and their connections and building these historical rapport and getting those stories out. It's something we're hoping to start this fall, but we'll have to see. The timing on everything is exactly that timing. But no, it's been a marathon. We're finally slowing down at the museum. And I actually was talking to my board president. She's like, have you taken your vacation yet this year? I said, no. She goes, I think maybe you should. I'm like, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Maybe it's noticeable.
I actually thought it was, I'm sorry, go on, Dan.
No, I was gonna tell her. So do you drink beer? Do you drink wine, beer?
I do not. I do not drink.
Okay.
I don't smoke, and I don't do drugs. I am raw dogging reality.
She's raw dogging it, man. I like that term.
Raw dogging.
See, now I can't buy her
I-
a bottle of Dirty Bastard because she brought that up, and I just figured, well, shit, get her
I'll
a
put it
present.
up on the shelf. I got 5 bottles of wine and a thing of champagne. I'm like, I got more alcohol.
I
in my
figured
house
we
than
become long friends here, and then I can just start calling you that once in a while.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. What I was going to say, I thought it was really kind of ironic when Tommy had brought up Berrien Springs and the courthouse and stuff. I don't know if you remember or not, or I don't even know if he said anything to you, but I do security at the Niles Ren Fair every year in Niles, Michigan. And last year, I had a fella come by that said he was the assistant curator to the Berrien Springs courthouse where the log cabin and everything was located at. And you guys were looking for things to pick up the advertising to bring things in. And I give him one of my business cards, and he was supposed to have, I guess, you get a hold of me to put on some kind of a living history encampment, a Civil War encampment, something like that. He took my business card, said, I will take this to my boss. You could probably expect to hear from them within the next week or so. And I did it again this year, hoping he'd show back up, and never did. And it's like, okay. What?
So it's probably
not
John
everybody's cut.
John Moog is our curator. We hired him in 2020. Bless that poor man's heart. He's got a little bit longer. Yep, that's him. You're on the old website. I think I took all that off now.
Yep, that looks like him.
Yeah, super nice
Hello,
guy.
Moto.
I hired him in 2020, and actually, we ended up going with Kova's cohort, who does the lumberjack reenactments. They will be joining us on the 25th and 26th of this month to do a lumberjack weekend for us. And actually, it was interesting when we talked about doing the whole weekend. That kind of changed how we were doing our programs this year. So we were trying some new techniques and styles, and like having entire weekends rather than dragging it out. And so we're going to see how it works out, but people are very excited about it. We just bought some lumberjack stuff for the gift shop, including a little baby bib that looks like a little lumberjack with a little saw teether, so fake saw teether. So
I'm very familiar with Kova's cohorts. They're a great group of people. They do one of the big weekend long displays there at the Ren Fair in Niles. So I'm very familiar with them and Swords of Valor. And
yeah, John comes back. He goes, I came across these folks. Let's do this. I said, the idea of doing the lumberjack, we decided to go with that because it ties in very well with the log cabin. And we do celebrate Michigan Log Cabin Day. The
nice.
Log Cabin Society of Michigan says they declared it the last Sunday of June, but we celebrate it the day, I think it's like June 25th or something. It's the day the proclamation was signed to to declare Log Cabin Day in Michigan. So we try to keep it on the day because it encourages people to come, to the museum or whatever. So we figured we'd try something like this. Like, can we use the cabin? I'm like, so long as you don't burn it down, you guys can use it.
Very cool.
So,
because I've heard that he's a lumberjack and he's okay because he sleeps at night and he works all day. Anybody?
Yes, I think of that stupid song every time I'm talking about the lumberjack.
Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad. My life has gotten to that point. It's very sad.
Just referencing social media whenever you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to tell you this, listening to your story, and I mean this from the heart to you one-on-one, that you're there at the time that the place needed you. You're supposed to be there. I've had that conversation with Francois Moyer more than once where, he owns the place, but he's a caretaker. He feels that I'm one of many owners who the castle needed me at this point. I happen to be in the picture. Here's how this came down. And certain things were done, and it continues. And I definitely believe that's a big part of your story. And I don't say that lightly. I think that that's a wonderful thing. I think the place needed you. Things were probably in the works without you realizing or not, in the stars, so to speak. And there you are. And look at the difference you're making already. So good on you. I hate to hear about anything historic running into those types of issues, but you're not alone. I'm sure that there are many across the state and all across the nation that struggled like you did, where they become so used to a set way of things that it just stifles them to death. I mean, the stagnation alone, it's an acceptable thing. and then they don't know how to get themselves out of it. And by the time they realize it's too late.
Right. And decline is so the life cycle of a nonprofit, museum or otherwise, you have the establishment, what they call birth. So this is when you first start. This is the seed of the idea. You're in the first couple of years. Then you got your growing years, like we call the teenage years, where you're growing and you may be growing rapidly. You might be doing some things. You're kind of really establishing yourself. Then that takes you to establishment. And that's usually people have been around for 10 or years or more, and they've got themselves very well established or known in the community, well respected.
Right.
And then you try to sustain that. But there comes a point in time where that establishment begins to fall out of step with what they need at the time, and they get stuck in a certain time point. So then they go into the decline. That's when you as an organization have to say, we need to make the changes or you're going to die.
Yep. And change is tough. Change is tough for a lot of folks, especially, in the historical realm, for sure.
Yes. Well, especially in history, because they're like, where it's all historical. I'm like, yeah, not how we're presenting it, bro. We got to get social.
Yeah, you got to change the theme song, man.
Exactly. So that point, we can go back to establish once you dig yourself out of that hole. Now, if you catch it early, it's not a difficult thing to come out of decline. So I was at I wouldn't say a disadvantage, but it was in a real bad position where, like I said, like I jokingly tell people, well, it died. It wouldn't have been my fault because it was already dying,
Right,
but, kind of pulling it out. And there's almost that challenge, it's funny because for 6 years prior to this, I was in Indiana working different jobs and nothing in museums. I was in Girls on the Run. I was on the board. I had kind of was helping them through their growth pains and learning all these skills. And I often talk about how symbiotic that relationship was. And then I got here and all that stuff I did for 6 years is now applicable to here. All right, we're going to change how we're doing the board. We're going to change how we're doing this. We're going to change how we're doing that. And it's, I'm 38. It's not like I'm like 26 and starry-eyed. I have been in this field long enough to know that I could do all of this and tomorrow it could die. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying, because we're, damn it, we're going to save these buildings whether they want to or not.
That's a good point. That's a beautiful point. Yeah. I say that many, at my age, you're still a youngin'. You got a long way to go yet, and as I tell everybody, I'm going to be 60 next year. That's one of the things I learned as well. You don't, if something fails, I won't say fails. If it comes to a point where, it's got to go by the wayside, it has to die, but you just don't give up. You don't give up on portions of the dream. And like you said, you get up, you keep moving. We had an incident happen within the last day or two. Speaking of what you just brought up, where we were getting ready to do an event at a venue, and because of the storms, ripped the roof off the place. And this is
Van Buren?
Yes, Van Buren. And Tad and the crews beside themselves. I don't want to give too much out on here, but I will tell you that they could use positive vibes and prayers and a lot of love and kindness right now, because the one thing you don't want to see is an institution like that, after all the years they've put into this, go to the wayside. I'm going to tell you, it's that serious. So, and it wasn't about my event. My heart was about them, and it was about the history and the things that were going on there. So I'm definitely going to stay in touch with them, but we're going to continue. I hit the ground running like you do. And as I said, I told myself, I'm not going to let that stop me what it is that we were designing to do, which is have a paranormal meet and greet. So we're just going to find another venue. We're still going to stick to the date, and that'll be announced. But back to you. It's not about me. I'm doing the William Shatner things. Let me help you by talking about me. So you're in this position. You've now talked to me. We have a thing scheduled. I'm not going to give away the date. I will say it's a little bit later in the summer going into the fall. We're excited about it. And what is it that you're looking forward to with us? I mean, are there any expectations or things that you're looking for?
I'm going into this kind of like, well, as I told you yesterday, Dan, that John and I have a long history of working in other locations that are relatively haunted. Of course, I had Brownsville up in Wisconsin and things like that. And John, worked at the Ford and a couple of other locations. There was some haunted. He's like, nope, there was something there and it didn't like me. Didn't like no man, nothing. It's like my wife didn't like me, So, and that was the thing that we talked about. Like, we don't feel squat. Like, I don't even feel like you asked me if I ever go on ghost hunts, and the answer is no, because I freak myself out, and thus I freak everybody else out because I overreact. And so I can freak myself out. I can build it up. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? What's that? What's this? And that's not helpful. But we've never had a sensation in any of the buildings where we're like, bro, I'm not coming in here at night. Like, I don't stick around when it's dark, but I don't have like this, if I don't get out of here, something's gonna touch me. I'm pretty sure of it. Like I was in Brownsville. Like
Right.
Brownsville, I run through the building to turn all the lights off and rush out. Here I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
But that doesn't
And
necessarily
see, that's actually something I was going to ask you before we ended this. Is you've got 5 buildings on the property.
Yep.
Had you ever encountered anything in any of those buildings, or felt anything like maybe you was being watched, or maybe you wasn't alone, or nothing?
Nothing. It's a pretty,
Wow.
for me, it's a pretty dead space sensation wise. And John too, he hasn't felt anything. Now, whether Brad's felt something, I don't know. I've actually never, I never asked the poor kid, but I never even had someone come to me. I would have people come to me in Brownsville going, there's a ghost in there, or I saw something, or something touched me, or whatever. Like that's how active
Wow.
Brownsville was. That in and of itself, Brownsville, my experience in Brownsville is a whole show on its own. Right? Like there's at least 2 hours worth of material in those stories. But here, no one says anything, no one feels anything, or at least no one says anything to me like, it's all weird and hunky. No, nothing. I have people who've lived in the homes, the last family to live in the cabin, the last family to live in sheriff's residence, and someone who lived in the records building when it was an apartment in the 1960s, or what was apartment until 2000, but in the 60s. And none of them have brought anything up except one woman who lived in a sheriff's residence. And she says that she was a child, so she took it with a grain of salt. She thought she saw the ghost of a woman in her 20s that they suspected was the judge's daughter. I have no clue who the judge is because there's no one compiled the history of who's ever lived in that house. I get how stupid that is, that we're the historical society.
I know that. Just I'm shaking my head, disbelief, man.
Who lived in my buildings, but
okay, man. You know what, guys? I got this World War II submarine. I know it's famous, but I don't know a damn thing about it. Can't find nothing about it. I mean,
you have me on here again. I'll tell you about the live bombs we had to have removed in 2020.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, we had to get the military involved. Anyway, so there's. I'm gonna die in this job, by the way. This is how I die.
Yeah, you were just all over the place. The gambit is wonderful. Keep going.
I know. So, but anyway, that's the only time I've had anyone tell me anything, and it was always grain of salt, grain of salt, grain of salt, just because they weren't sure whether or not it was a child's memory or like an imagination, or if it's something she actually saw. But nothing since then. That's why I'm like, if you guys find something, I'd be surprised, because I don't feel, but I don't really feel a lot of things anyway. So.
Yeah, and I don't want this to sound like a brag, but maybe just going to take the right people and some of the right stuff to bring something out. And 99.9% of whatever I've encountered, I say this openly on many shows, has been more of a beautiful experience with the paranormal than ever has been anything frightening or, just horrible. I've never had anything horrible go on that I can recall. There's been some dark stuff, but I didn't feel that there. I'll be honest with you. I assessed myself after I left. I didn't want to give on too much to you other than the thing I got about your dog. I felt something there. It's just, I didn't, see you pointing. Yeah.
The dog.
There's the dog. Yep. I didn't really feel like people were like right there, but I knew something was lurking. It's a feeling that I know something's here. That's the way I put it, but I couldn't put my hand on it because I was really worried about meeting you, and I was a little apprehensive because I've been out of touch with, meeting folks and doing this stuff for a while. So like I said, I'm glad that the meeting went well. I left with a smile, girl. I did.
Oh,
I want to tell you that I did. I found you very, very appreciative of history and just a wonderful person. Hopefully you got the same thing for me. I needed that. I would tell you, I've been down for a while and I needed that. So you made my day.
Good.
So we're looking forward to coming in, doing our thing. I want to tell Drew, hopefully that way we're there on that date, that we do some live stream We may be bringing an audience in with us on certain stuff, show some little things, not everything, but just kind of open it up and see what happens.
Well, and being a historical reenactor and historian myself, that's one of the things that I really look forward to is getting a chance to spend time with her and talk about, Berrien Springs history, Berrien County's history. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I've driven by with my wife several times and seen it and said, "Oh my God, I've got to stop there sometime and check that place out." And we've just never had the time to do it. And it's like, man, now I'm going to have my chance to talk to the LOC lady in charge and, get an idea of exactly what's going on in that area, that town, that county. And I'm really looking forward to it.
The good news is you're not going to have to deal with any live bombs. So there's that.
Yeah, because you got rid of all of them for us.
Yeah, we dealt with those. I want to thank you for being with us. There's so much more to talk about. We'll bring you back for a part 2 very soon. I promise you. She has a lot more to share with us. You got to hear all of her Brownsville stories. I mean, they're just phenomenal. And she did share with me. I didn't want to really give it away here on the show. She shared with me that somebody's won a Darwin Award there. In such a sense that's the only death that she knows of. And maybe we'll save it for the second show because I think people have to wait to hear how this knucklehead. I respect the dead guys, but listen, when I hear you've done something, I don't want to give it away. It was so phenomenally idiotic. I couldn't believe she was actually telling me this. So nobody said that people who were educated or anything back in the day were truly smart, because I meet dumb educated people every day.
I always say history is fun to study because people have always been people, and there's nothing new under the sun. So whatever stupidity you think that could potentially have happened in 1927, bro, it's not nearly as bad as you think it is.
Oh, it's replete. It's replete with idiots. Yeah, it was funny. It was funny. But I wanted to thank you for taking time out tonight. You were wonderful to meet, and I want to thank you again for opening up your heart and of course the site to the guys. And we'll come on in, we'll do our thing, and we'll definitely try to give it the best effort. And of course, I wanted to reassure you too that you'll be getting a report and some evidence back and some different things. So if you look to working with us down the road, maybe we put something together and. We'll talk here and there. We talked off about some other stuff too, but thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Oh, class act all the way.
We'll have to get her for the full 2 hours next time, because I got a feeling there's a lot of stories out of Southwest Texas.
Oh yeah, I would have went 2 hours with you tonight, but I'm spending the next couple of days with the grandkids, so I'm gonna get back upstairs to my grandboys. We're camping out in the living room tonight, so Grandpa's going to have a sore back tomorrow because I'm not going out in the heat in the tent. Just telling everybody out in the open. We talked about camping in the yard. 104 degrees that said no. That was a big no for me. Maybe when I was 21, I'd probably try to pull it off, but not so much now.
Not now.
But, not now. So enjoy your chicken. I hope you didn't burn it too bad.
It's just the skin. It'll be fine.
It's just I just burnt the skin. It's those with the lotion on its skin, right?
Or it gets the hose again.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Well, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find Berrien Springs. Give us the rundown.
All right. Berrien Springs is located in Southwest Michigan, and the History Center at Courthouse Square is at 313 North Cass Street in Berrien Springs. We are open Wednesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Closed major holidays and most federal holidays. We are open on the 4th of July, but that's because we host the annual Berrien Springs Pickle Festival, which will be this year between 11 and 4 on the grounds. You can find us online at berrienhistory.org. Follow us on Facebook, the History Center at Courthouse Square, or the History Center on Instagram. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you out. And if you ever want a tour, give us a call. We love giving tours to folks and sharing the history of our grounds.
Yeah, and throw them a donation, man. All of you guys watching and anybody listening, do you hear me? Give them some help. Give them some help up there. Any of these historic places in your town, wherever it may be. Thanks so much. And I want to give everybody this last little shout out to unrestrictedradio.com, free app. You can Bluetooth and listen to us like this show right now. You're listening to us wherever you are. Sunday night, you can Bluetooth in your car, Bluetooth us wherever you might be. I'm telling you, it's a free app. Friends, neighbors, family you don't like even. I've got that side of the family. Don't we all? Okay. Henderson Castle, hendersoncastle.com. And, of course, Gun Barrel Coffee, gunbarrelcoffee.com. And, the Berrien Springs Association, check them out. Give them some love. And I'm going to leave you with this. If you cannot be kinder and smarter, okay? Now, I take this from my friend who's retired now, but if you cannot be kinder and smarter, please be quieter. Okay? Can you do that? Be quieter. All right, everybody, I love you. Try to get along with one another. Share a smile. Doesn't cost you anything but a smile. You all take care, and we will see you next time right here on Unrestricted Paranormal.
Thanks, Rhiannon.